All right, welcome to episode 3 of Open Source featuring Sean from Avalon. Open Source is a show that where we like to kind of just humanize the guests a little bit, find out more about them, the genius behind the project, so to speak. How you doing today, Sean?
I'm doing great, man. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anyone that knows me knows how excited I've been for Avalon. We've had you on a couple of the Catalyst shows so far. It's been great seeing you kind of like go from this project that everyone was kind of poking around at for a while. We're like, what's going on? What are they doing? It looks kind of cool. And then you like randomly pull up with like an ominous trailer or some shit like every couple of months, and then like go back into the lab. Now you're a lot more like front facing, like things are starting to really cook. It's exciting times, bro.
Yeah. I mean, we want to do things a little differently. Historically, I think a lot of developers in the space have been really like marketing companies first and game developers second. Whereas, we're just like, all right, like we're just gonna put our heads down and build, and then every once in a while we'll show people what we're up to. But that's changed this year. We got to build a community. We need to be out there. We need to be talking to our fans. We need to be talking to our community members, and because we're going to market this year, and then the only way to do this right is to do it together. So.
Hell yeah, going to market. Yeah, that's right. You had mentioned on one of your tweets that you were born in the year of the snake, and then it's going to market in the year of the snake, right?
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't actually know I was the year of the snake, and I was like joking because my co-founder Jeff, he's the year of the horse, and he's like a really hard worker. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm the year of the dragon because I was just making it up.
Yeah.
And then I was the year of the snake, and so he's been teasing me about it. But hey, it's the year of the snake this year, and it's the year we're going to release Avalon. So I'll take every bit of good fortune we can get.
Hell yeah. Yeah, my sister was born in the year of the dragon. She didn't let me forget it. And then I was born in the year of the dog. So yeah, dragon's considered like the absolute luckiest one.
Yeah,
So growing up, we're part Asian in my family.
yeah.
So she wouldn't shut the fuck up about it, man. She's like, I'm the year of the dragon, like nah, 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 nah. I was like, whatever, dude.
Whatever, dude.
um,
Yeah.
all
Love
right,
it.
so I actually, now that we're actually talking about your Twitter a little bit, I had seen this tweet, like, obviously getting into the show, I do a little homework on the guest. And I had seen this tweet you talking about that Final Fantasy VIII was a game that got you into gaming. Like,
Yeah.
for me, I have many games to attribute that to, but I feel like all of our stories are so wildly different yet very similar. Can you get into that a little bit more?
Yes, I mean, I was a little kid, and my dad was like kind of into tech, and we had like the 3DO, which most people haven't heard of, and we were playing video games on it, like Road Rash. It was pretty fun. Like played a little bit of Mario, and like it's pretty cool. But like I had this like really wild imagination as a kid, and one of my friends came over. It was actually the PC version of Final Fantasy VIII. I think it's like the only year like Square Enix made a PC game, or one of the earliest versions of like one of their PC games. And I remember going in and playing that demo and like summoning the Leviathan, which is like this massive blue floating dragon, and then it coming down and like creating total waste of all of its enemies, and like this huge mechanic spider that was chasing us, and this guy with a gun that's also a blade and a gun blade. And I'm just like, how fucking cool is this? Like, this is this whole other completely imaginative world with all these amazing characters. And that just got me hooked, man. From then on, I was like, I want to create worlds like this. I want to, give someone else this feeling that I'm getting through playing this game.
Dude, I'll never forget the day that I first saw the Gunblade. Like, it's one of those things in gaming that you never it just stays in your mind forever. At
Yeah.
least for me too. Like, I can definitely relate to that with Final Fantasy. Like,
I,
it was
I
a good
have
game that
I
got
have a
me into
gunblade
it.
right behind me.
Oh shit, let's go.
Let me see. Do I have it right here? Yeah, there's my gunblade. Okay, there it is. I'm grabbing it. Here's my gunblade. I bought this at
Oh man, that's amazing.
I bought this at MegaCon probably 10 years ago. I need to put it
Hell
up on
yeah.
my wall, but it's a gunblade. There you go. All right. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's my gunblade. So
That's amazing. Yeah. Final Fantasy is one of there's like certain games that make a really like long time lasting impression on you, right? Final Fantasy is one of those games that no matter what kind of gamer you are, you've heard of it, you know what it looks like, and you're not gonna forget it.
yeah, it's emotional. It's emotional,
Yeah.
man. I'm replaying through well the Final Fantasy VII remake franchise, and it's really well done. It's one
It's
of the
funny
people
because remakes traditionally get a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But they seem to kind of have done it the right way from what I've been hearing from most people. I haven't played the remake yet.
Yeah, it's it can be grindy at times, but it's definitely done pretty well. I'm happy with it.
Speaking of, since we're on the topic of Final Fantasy, how did you feel about their attempt to make the MMO? Like, were you into it at all?
I didn't play a lot of it. I played some of I think it was 11, Final Fantasy 11, which was I thought pretty good at the time. And then the other one's 14. I mean, man, that game has definitely kind of a crazy history behind it. I mean, their initial launch was terrible, if I
Yep.
recall right. And I played it and it was like really bad. And then they relaunched it a couple years later and it was actually pretty good. I mean, I think at one time, I'm not sure if it still is, it was the most popular MMO for a bit. So they've done
Yep.
a really good job with it. I'm not as big into their MMOs. I really like the classic sort of storytelling of the Final Fantasy franchise. That's really why I play the games. And you don't get that as much in their MMOs. At least I didn't experience it as much.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, they had overtaken WoW for a bit, and then WoW like went crazy and started launching all the classic remakes and shit.
Yeah.
Like I feel they kind of put that pressure on WoW to actually have to deliver. So I credit Final Fantasy 14 for making Blizzard and Activision having to actually have to give a fuck again. Like they had gotten so comfortable with just being the number one MMO because they didn't have any challenger.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what Avalon's gonna do. We're gonna make them up their game in a few years.
hell yeah, hell yeah. What? So if you were into the storytelling side of Final Fantasy, like what kind of MMO were you into? Like, because
So I mean, I
Avalon's
grew up.
kind of an MMO, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Avalon's definitely got a lot of MMO inspiration. So I actually grew up playing EverQuest, which not as many people have heard of or played, but EverQuest was really
The
the first
OG, the OG.
3D massive multiplayer game that was like really done well. It was really the game that like without EverQuest you wouldn't even there would be no World of Warcraft. There would be
Nope.
no Final Fantasy 14, right? And like playing that game, I think it came out in 99. Like at the time it was just completely revolutionary. There was nothing even close to it out there. And it was just like holy crap, like this and this the other game, like I would say Final Fantasy was my first game, and then EverQuest was the next game that like really like got me hooked. It was like, and that's why I always was so into MMOs. There's like this idea of like this persistent world, all these other people that you could explore, create worlds with, explore worlds with. Like that was really really cool. And now 2 decades later, I never imagined my co-founder at Avalon is like literally one of the EverQuest founders, which I never imagined would be the case. So it's really cool to be working with Jeff on
Yeah,
Avalon. But yeah,
yeah, I wanted to get into that
yeah,
actually. I used to tell people all the time that the metaverse concept never felt new to me because WoW felt like a metaverse, and then EverQuest before it, right?
yeah.
I didn't get to play EverQuest much. I was a little like young I started playing WoW when I was like 9, right? So like EverQuest happened a little bit before that time, and I was really into Diablo. Like from the age of like 5 to 9, I was a Diablo. But yeah, my mom got me into Diablo like super early. Like,
Same. My parents put me
yeah,
in Diablo 1. So it was about the same timeline with
yeah,
you, but like about 5 years earlier. I was playing
yeah,
Diablo 1 at like 6 years old, and I probably shouldn't have been because that game was gory as hell. But
yeah. When I got older, I was like, "Mom, what the fuck are you doing?" But it made such a big impression on me that
yeah.
the guys make fun of me because I'm always talking about my Zod rune tattoo, but I have like
That's
a Zod
awesome.
rune tatted and I
Which
tatted
one
it on
did
my middle
Zahn make?
finger.
Which one was it? Did Zahn make Enigma, or like what did it make? I forget.
Yeah, Zod. You needed Zod to make Enigma, and then it
Enigma,
was
yeah.
an indestructible rune. So,
Yeah, and it made like
um,
one of the axes too, I think.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I was going through like a really hard time at the time, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna tat the Zod rune because it'll make me like indestructible.
oh, that's tight.
Yeah. So I mean, shout out to our parents, young Diablo gamers. But I wanted to get into, you mentioned Jeff, and I wanted to get into that a little bit because you had mentioned that Jeff's first document on the metaverse was dated back to 1999, and you've kind of been like dreaming of multiverses your whole life, right? So it's like very serendipitous that the guy that helped co-found the game that you basically was part of what sent you down this path is now your co-founder, right?
Isn't that crazy?
This is
Um,
fucking insane,
that's crazy, man.
actually.
Yeah. It's kind of like you have your idol, and now he's your best friend and partner,
Yeah,
which is really kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So back in literally 1999, the EverQuest team and Jeff, Jeff was really, so he's titled as the producer on EverQuest, but a huge part of EverQuest's success
Yeah.
was attributed to Jeff. And I
Anyone that
think
knows game design, game development, the producers like fucking everything. All right, go ahead, Sean.
he ran that
Yeah,
project, man. Like
yeah.
he's the guy that's like, all right, this is what we're shipping. This is all, and then he like blow it out of the park and do all these extra stuff, and like they worked their asses off on that game, and like 2 a.m. nights, 5-6 days a week for sometimes months and years, just because they were doing so well, and they wanted to see it keep growing. But yeah, so all the way back to 1999, and it's funny, Tim Sweeney, I think today probably has the closest thing to a metaverse with Fortnite currently. Fortnite Creative, Roblox, I would say is up there as well. But Tim Sweeney, after EverQuest, Jeff started a company called Digital Games Online. It's like 2004, 2003, and they were starting a company called a game called Vanguard Saga Heroes, which unfortunately didn't do very well. But Tim would come down and he would meet with Jeff and his team, because this is back before like Epic Games was very well known. Unreal Engine was like kind of a smaller thing, fairly big in the games industry, but small compared to what it is today. And so Tim would come down and like he'd work with Jeff and his team, and they'd talk about the metaverse. And Jeff would be like working on Vanguard like with his team to like 2 a.m, eating lean cuisines, and them like talking about their vision for the future. And like Tim has stayed true to that, from all the way back to the early 2000s where it is today, based on what Jeff told me. And Jeff, like myself, have also had this vision for a metaverse, which I think goes a little bit beyond, or at least is fairly different to what Epic Games is doing today. And really excited to be building that now with Avalon.
Yeah, it's very frustrating for me to watch people look at the metaverse term and be like, "Oh, that was a fad." It's like, it's literally like the only outcome that ever makes sense for gaming in a long-term perspective, to me at least, right? Like, especially when you've been an MMO player, like the metaverse just makes sense, right? Um,
Yeah.
could you mention anything from like what he wrote in 1999 that kind of really stuck with you, or was there any like individual perspective that's been like crazy for you to see like come to life?
Well, there's a couple things. When it comes to technology, like they come and go, like hype cycles come and go. It's kind of like AI right now. Like everyone's like super, like AI's the best thing ever. And like, look, AI is going to completely change the way we interface with technology. It's completely change. But there's going to be a trough of disillusionment, and it's probably going to happen in the next year or two, where, hey, like a lot of these companies that are valued at billions of dollars are basically just chatbots, right? And they probably shouldn't. Not saying this is OpenAI or any specific company, but like some of these companies that are maybe just exposing those APIs are probably overvalued. And the same thing happened with the metaverse, and it happens with every technology, a normal technological trend. But if you look at what the metaverse ultimately promises, it's essentially the ultimate medium in which humans are going to interface with technology, right? The way we're doing it right now, like I'm looking at a computer screen, I'm looking at a webcam, I'm talking to your virtual avatar, like that's pretty cool, but it's nowhere near, like imagine if I was actually in the same, or at least what it felt like, the same room as you, talking to you,
Yeah.
having a nearly physical conversation, right? And there's maybe listeners in the crowd that are all seated in the area with you, and maybe they're more physically present, right? And then there's an AI in the room as well. So when I think about the metaverse, it's sort of like the ultimate technological medium where all these things are going to eventually come and live. Now we're not there yet, but we're going to get there soon. But what's been eerie about Jeff and I is, Jeff. I first discovered Jeff because EverQuest Next was the game that he was working on back in like 2016, and EverQuest Next was almost like an early version of the metaverse. It was like this voxel based game where like you could create your own games and worlds and experiences. And I saw like a talk he was doing. I thought he had like a almost eerily similar vision for the metaverse as me. And so I pitched him Avalon, and midway through the pitch, he interrupts me and says, "Hold on, Sean," and then pitches me the rest of my pitch. And I'm like, "What the?" And I'm like, have you been talking to our partners or investors? Like, where did you learn all these things? He's like, "No, it's like you and I want to make the exact same game, and it's the same game I've wanted to make since 1999." So that was really kind of cool when that happened. And since then, we've been totally aligned in the game we want to make.
That's actually kind of creepy. Like, it's cool. It's cool as hell. But it's also like, you know, simulation theory, you know.
It's creepy, man. And I can tell you, I've been making games a long time, and it is very rare. Like everybody believes that they have the best ideas, especially in the creative industry. And it's very rare to be working with someone that's a partner of yours, and for you guys to just be aligned creatively. It's actually very rare. When you're making
Very
art, so for that
difficult.
to happen with Avalon was like, it was meant to be. So
Yeah, it's actually really difficult for that to. It's very, like you said, very rare and difficult for that to happen. Like
yeah.
usually, there's a lot of creative compromise when it comes
Well,
to how people want to do things.
which is usually why like the best games typically they don't have, I would say, like a democratic process for creativity, because everyone has very wildly different ideas, and you have a creative director that like sort of sets the vision and sets the direction of the game. Otherwise you get like products that just feel sort of bland across the board, and you can really feel it when it happens. You look at a game like, as an example, Dark Souls, which I think creatively is masterfully well done, but it has like a very specific theme and feel to the game. But you can imagine if you took like 12 different random people that work for a company and all gave them equal creative control, you would never get a Dark Souls, right? You'd probably get the most recent Dragon Age by comparison, in terms of the creativity. So yeah.
Shots fired, but you're not wrong, dude. Like, yeah, it's kind of, I almost liken that type of thing to Tim Burton. When you like, when you see like a Tim Burton film, I know he's not a game developer, but when you see a Tim Burton film, it's very clearly his. Like,
Yeah.
he owns the entire vibe, from costume design to lighting to everything, right? So it's cool to see you make that parallel, because I've never really looked at games that way, but it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Games absolutely. I mean, they don't have to be done that way, but I would say many of the best like creative expressions, like you think about, even like Bioshock. A lot of these games have like masterful stories. There's almost always a vision holder that's like probably fighting with the team constantly to keep it a certain way, because a lot of those things are just weird and you don't really get it until all the pieces come together. It's kind of like Star Wars too. Like when Star Wars was being made, like the cast, even the cast of the film, this documentary I saw recently on it, were like, this is going to be stupid. Like this is going to be ridiculous. We're just like, this hairy guy in an outfit and these lightsabers, all these little character models. But you need that person that really like has the vision for the product we're doing. And I think Jeff and I have done a really good job of holding that vision at Avalon. I will say we're a little bit different than most games, and that we're more of a platform than like a game with a story. It's not like we're creating a Final Fantasy VIII where there's this like clear linear path and this story we want to tell and these like very bespoke iconic characters. It's more of like a platform play where we do have our story and there is a vision associated around it, but it's sort of secondary to the tools that we're creating and the AI content we're creating, so that our players can create content, create worlds. So
Hell yeah. I mean, it's very interesting to see, right? Because when you look at like the trailers and stuff that you've released with Avalon, it looks so MMO esque. Like I've seen their first video. One of the first videos that I saw was on our call like over a year ago. I think that one of the first videos. I don't know if it was the very first, but you were like showing us the gameplay of you like talking to the AI, and it was like
yeah,
giving you the answers back, and it looks like a shooter in that particular world. But then like I've seen other videos where we're building a tower and like a whole town, and that looks like an MMO. And then like the more recent one, it looks like MMO style combat. Like it kind of gave me like some Guild Wars kind of nostalgia. Um, with like one of the more recent videos that you did. So like how does that work, right? Like
yeah.
without obviously giving away the sauce or anything like that, but how does that work as far as like I guess the way that the game's gonna
Yeah,
be
so
created?
something we, when we look at games like Roblox and Fortnite, something we don't like about those games and something we think Web3 is a really good place in is this idea of like persistence, interoperability. And so like when I go from like game to game, world to world, in Fortnite Creative or in Roblox, they're like very disparate experiences. Like I'm like loading into a game world. I'm now playing, a racing game. I load into a game world. I'm now playing, I don't know, a battle royale, but like I'm completely different characters. There's no like interoperability, right? And so in Avalon, we think of ourselves more as like creating this almost like Dungeons and Dragons esque rule set. And
Oh
so there is
yeah.
this like MMO at its core, but like when I go into the cyberpunk world and I get this really dope like edge sword, I can bring that edge sword with me into a high fantasy world, as well as my character and my character progression, all of my items and stats and assets, all my digital identity essentially, and bring that with me into another experience. And what's really cool about that is like as we start to do multiple IP, we can start to see like IP come together in like really interesting ways. So, as an example, like maybe one day in the future we'll work with a Nintendo company and there will be a Pokemon planet, and you could go and collect Pokemon, and then you could bring one of those Pokemon with you into Dragon Ball Z and then fight Goku with one of your Pokemon, right? Like that's and then we're able to do that because of like the rule set that we're building at its core. That's IP agnostic and sort of genre agnostic and can move from game to game and world to world. So.
Man, you said the magic words for me, dude. Dungeons and Dragons. I love D&D, and I get what you mean in the sense that you kind of have this character profile and you kind of take it from one
Right.
experience to the next.
Yeah.
D&D was actually really responsible for me to rehab my to talk about myself for a whole 30 seconds. I know none of the audience cares, but let me have my 30 seconds. Yeah, it was actually responsible for rehabbing my brain when I lost my memory. So I played Dungeons and Dragons like daily for 2 years, and that's actually how I regained my memory after losing it after having COVID. My fever was so high that it completely wiped out like everything. And Dungeons and Dragons is I had always played it casually, but I always thought I was a little too cool for it. I was like, I'm an MMO player. I'm not obsessed with D&D. And then D&D is single-handedly brought me back. So shout out Dungeons and Dragons. Games do save lives type shit. And yeah.
Glad you're here, man. Glad you're here. Glad you made it. Is that indestructible rune? I'm sure helped as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's kind of why I got it. I was like, fuck it. Like after going through that experience, I'm indestructible, bro. Yeah. So that I love that game, and I love to hear when games and teams reference it because I feel like anything in the RPG genre really starts there. Period.
Yeah, it really does. It does. And it's such a good point of reference for what it is that we want to do, because Dungeons and Dragons is what it is today, not necessarily because of Dungeons and Dragons, but because of the community around it. Right? Think about all of the awesome homebrew content, all of the cool campaigns that people have made, and all the custom characters that people have made, all the different iterations of Dungeons and Dragons. Like that. That's why I use it as a point of reference, because that's ultimately what we want to do with Avalon. We want people to create their own campaigns, their own game experiences, their own worlds, their own IP, or work with other people's IP, and then have a place where all of these things can live and come together.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's what I really like about what I'm hearing is there seems like there's the rule set is going to make the game feel very similar depending on no matter what world you're in, but it allows for complete extreme situations like a Pokemon world or like a Dragon Ball Z world, right?
Yeah. Initially, the games are definitely gonna we'll have a control set and a rule set that is very persistent from game to game. So if I'm playing, if I'm calling in a dungeon and then I leave my dungeon and I maybe go play a battle royale, I'm still gonna be my keyboard's still gonna be, my hands are still gonna be in the same place, my keyboard's still in the same space. I'm still casting abilities in the same locations, but maybe they're different abilities, or maybe I've got a different enemy type. So we want the game to feel cohesive, so it's very familiar as you go from game to game, world to world. Yep. Now, in the future, we might go a little bit more crazy with it and let people, write their own C++ and then create their own custom game modes. But that's what Unreal Engine is for, right? If people want to create their own entirely unique game experiences, they don't need to be using this. This is more about making it really easy for anyone to create their own games very quickly on top of our rule set. So more like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign versus writing out Dungeons and Dragons from scratch.
Hell yeah. All right, cool. So this kind of is a perfect segue into I notice you're a bit of a decentralization maxi. And the way that you're talking about people building on Avalon feels very similar to that. It feels almost like open source tech. How do you I guess maybe talk a little bit more about that, because it was also interesting seeing you say earlier a creative director needs to own the vision. And we have so many different iterations of how people view decentralization in our space and stuff like that,
Yeah, and our vision is decentralization, right? So that's a huge part of it, and frankly, a lot of companies would never even they might say that and not mean it, but like we really, really mean it. But when I think about decentralization, so let me firstly like why this is important to me. I've talked a bit about the metaverse. Like obviously you believe in the metaverse, and but when I think about the future technology, I'm imagining the metaverse as this like ultimate or penultimate technology in terms of like how humans interact with other humans, right? Like the way we currently interact with the web is going to be completely replaced by the metaverse, in my opinion, sometime over the next decade or two. AI, like all these great technologies that are coming about, are essentially going to enhance this core experience. But what sort of terrifies me about that is whoever builds what is the metaverse. You look at technology companies today. There's really just a handful of companies that own the majority of technology that we interface with on a daily basis. And by the way, the average American spends something like 4 or 5 hours a day interfacing with technology, and most of those hours are spent looking through applications that one of 4 or 5 companies built. So when the metaverse comes about, that number is probably going to be increased, 7 or 8 hours a day on average, so like half your waking hours, and it's probably going to be 1 or 2 companies. And so the possibility of a dystopian future is extremely high in that scenario, extremely high. Um, Imagine if the people or the person running that company doesn't have our best interest in mind all of the time, which is probably going to be the case. And I think the only way to balance that is through decentralization. You have to you have to equal the power. I think power. I think an old saying from Plato: "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." So if we hand all that power into one individual, or a handful of individuals, or a handful of companies, that can be pretty bad. So I'm not. Is Avalon going to create the platform that most of the planet isn't interacting with? I don't know, but I certainly want to try and push in that direction, and at least spread that message, because I think decentralization is key to the metaverse. It's an absolute must, and it's something we're building in from the beginning to what we're doing.
In a weird way, like when you break down the numbers, right? 4 to 5 hours a day from on applications interfacing with technology made by 3 to 4 companies. It's kind of like almost like the metaverse already exists in its own very
It
weird
does
way.
in its own way.
Yeah.
There's a good argument for it that it currently exists today in just like a 2D format, and I would say like a lo-fi format. I would say that's a good argument. Like the internet today, I would say is kind of a metaverse already. The term is fairly loose, but I'm sort of seeing where it's going to be in 20 years, 30 years, and it's kind of scary. And we should be a little bit more scared, because with that fear, we can like, hey, how do we do this right? How do we do this in a way that doesn't just f up society? How do we make it more of a utopia rather than a dystopia?
Yeah, I mean, fear is a good thing, I think, depending the situation. Like, fear is essentially your body's nervous system telling you, hey, like something's clearly fucking wrong. Wake the fuck up.
Right.
And I am also someone that I'm a big decentralization maxi myself. Like, I love the idea of it. I know in certain cases it's not the most idealistic thing. Like, we're gonna have to try so many different models, I guess you could say, or formats for it. But in general, I think for us to have like the best outcome for humanity, I agree decentralization is going to be really important. And especially, I never really, I guess, thought about it too much when it came to like the metaverse specifically. I always thought of it in the case of like overall humanity, or how money flows, or how money moves, and things like that. But then when someone like you makes the argument that we're all going to end up in the metaverse, it's like, yeah, you're kind of just like beating everyone to the punch by starting it with the metaverse first, right? Because
Yeah.
everyone kind of conforms to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Decentralization. The problem that I think, so decentralization is basically just democracy in the form of technology, right? That's if you're going to like define
Yep.
it. But and democracy isn't always efficient. In fact, it's oftentimes very, very inefficient. And that I think is the problem a lot of game developers and other people in different industries have had with it, is that in many ways people just describe it as a shittier database, because sometimes it kind of is. Like for example, if I want to do movement in Roblox, right? I can just ping the server and say, hey, I want to move my character in this direction. And then the server says, okay, that's a centralized authority. It's interesting. Okay, you can move in this direction. And in Roblox, there's 70 million or 100 million or so people playing the game. And every second while somebody's playing the game, they're updated 10 times a second to tell that server that they're moving. So that's roughly 700 million transactions a second saying that, hey, we can move this to a centralized authority. Should that be decentralized? No, like we don't need 700 million transactions a second to tell somebody we're moving, right? Like we don't need a peer-to-peer network for that. But there's a lot of things that absolutely should be, decentralized. Things like governance, should be decentralized. Like I don't. That's the sort of thing that doesn't have the sort of transaction volume that movement does and has major impact over the control of an ecosystem. So governance should be decentralized. Things like financial transactions should be decentralized. Like, do we want to trust our virtual financial institutions forever, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways I think this can be built into the metaverse. And I'm writing up this blog post on how to like properly decentralize the metaverse and solve for interoperability. And not everything should be decentralized, right? Like I was talking about before, things like movement shouldn't be, but maybe the servers that host things like movement and gameplay should be decentralized, right? And so anyway,
Nah,
kind
I
of getting
mean,
a little technical there, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, I love it because this is the stuff that For I would like to say that I'm relatively a smart guy, but like as a gamer, I'm more of a creative. I'm not like a tech bro per se,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I mean, this is stuff that I love to hear because I'm learning. I know gamers everywhere are gonna watch this and they're gonna learn as well. And I love to have these types of conversations because this is evergreen content. We're gonna be able to look back at this 5-10 years from now and be like, holy shit, like Sean was cooking, bro. Like, you know, um, no, I totally agree. Like, let's have some common sense when it comes to what we decentralize for sure. You know, um, I do. There are some people that really focus on like the weirdest things to decentralize. Being in a couple of DAOs now myself and things like that. Like, guys, we don't need to decentralize every single thing. Like, let's use it for the higher
right.
brow shit.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
the idea of fully on-chain games as an example. I don't want to poop on them, but like there are some I think really interesting use cases for it. But
yeah,
to make Avalon fully on-chain would be just stupid. There's
that
no
would
good
be really
example of like a
hard.
good right. Like how am I if I have 50 million people playing the game or even a million people playing the game, I'm gonna need like 70 million transactions a second just to move people in my game. Like it's stupid, right? But like
Yeah,
it doesn't not only that, more importantly, it doesn't actually add value. Right? Like what do people actually care about? Right? They care about governance. They care about their game balance. They care about the economics. They care about financial transactions. And they care about the game living forever, right? Those, and we can solve all of those things by making those parts of the application decentralized, while still making things like the gameplay systems, a part of a centralized hosting service that is then distributed decentrally, right? So that's something we're actively solving.
that's actually a really good point. That's something I was like with a game like Avalon, with how dynamic you guys are creating, like what I would imagine the rule set to be like, and how you're talking about all those transactions in a second and shit like that. One would definitely be a nightmare to put on chain. I like on chain games, but I question whether or not every single thing needs to be on chain. If the developer leaves, I'm pretty sure not every single action needs to be on chain for us to continue to build on it. One.
Yeah,
Two, how is like I guess the more dynamic you make a game, how buggy is the development process, right? Because like I've been talking to people, like I've been learning way more about game development as I've been in Web3 gaming, crypto gaming scene, and like devs are like, hey, dude, I'll push like one update, and then like 20 other things go fucking wonky, and then I have to like go fix those things. So with like, how's that experience been like with Avalon?
man. So making games is really hard. Like we've been making Avalon now for 3 years, and we're planning on going into like an early access later this year. And like that's actually people don't know this. People are like, Sean, why are you taking so long? I thought you were gonna have the game out last year, and I did too. Um, this is actually very, very fast for an MMO for the kind of game we want to make. And as you add more features, it can oftentimes multiply the complexity because those features interact with other systems. Avalon, already an MMO is a very difficult game to make. It's probably the most difficult game genre for games that
For
to make
sure.
MMO games. But then you layer user-generated content on top of it. Well, you just actually multiplied the complexity of making an MMO, and you're layering AI into it as well. Like those are really our pillars, right? It's like UGC, MMO, AI, and Web3, right? And so you throw all those things together, things start getting really crazy really fast. So it has been very difficult. We'll make great strides in one location, and that'll break things in other locations. So balancing our efforts has been really important. I think for us, what's been very important was actually to minimize our vision and to really focus on like the core tenets and the core things that are going to make Avalon a success. I think throughout our development, we've tried to do too many things. If I'm being candid, tried to add too many cool things that we eventually want to add. Right, tried to be the Oasis right out of the gate, and we're just not ready for that. Like we're going to come out of the gate with, I think, like a very awesome core like survival crafting MMO experience with UGC on top. And it won't be like it's not like I'm in Ready Player One right away, but like you can see where this is going, and you can see how we can get the rest of the way there. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the coolest thing about this space is we get to see the earliest parts of it. From depending what kind of gamer you are, like I find it very cool. Some gamers are a little impatient and they're like, "Oh, this is broken." That like that's kind of the fucking point, guys. So if you're watching this, you go to try Avalon. Like, I'm not, I don't have a bias towards Sean in any way. I just think that the concept is very cool. But also, like when you approach game devs, have a certain level of like, I would say patience and understanding, because the whole point that we're in this industry is we get to see it at the earliest stages, but that's also kind of like sometimes it's a little trouble when you're like, oh shit, like this is broken, this isn't working, or this might be like, where's the rest of the content? And it's kind of like you get to experience it as the updates are
yeah,
pushed and as things
it's
happen.
it's stressful,
Um,
man. I can tell you. I've
yeah,
been doing this a long time, and it's making games so much work. Like my team, I got 40 people working on Avalon right now. Last week, like there was at least 15 people up until 2 a.m. like every night. 15 people, like that was like one of them, and that's like not even unusual. And that was just to like fix clothing and materials and like some combat related bugs, right? And it's so there's so much work that goes into these things, and you can't really understand it unless you're a game developer. So I have a lot of respect out there for people making games. It is a labor of passion and a labor of love. But there are people in this space too that are taking advantage of people's goodwill, and those people should be that like that. There should be repercussions for that as well. It's certainly not something we're doing. Like we're very serious. Like we're putting all of our energy into making a great game. And I think that people are going to be pretty happy with what we have later this year. It's going to take more time, I think, to go to like be World of Warcraft, right? We're not there. Like we need more years. We need more years of cooking. But I think you'll be able to see like the first percentage of the next evolution of MMOs and what
yep.
Avalon has to offer. Like the first 20% of the next evolution of MMOs. And I think if people can like latch onto that and see that and want to support us, 5 years from now, we could dethrone World of Warcraft, right? Like I would not be surprised if that's the case.
That's the confidence I like to hear, man. Like I see too many devs. No offense to the devs out there, but I see too many devs being like, "Oh, well, hopefully, or we'll see." No, like I want confidence from devs, dude. Like you're spending your life. This is your life's work. You're spending your your you're not spending time with your family because of this. You're not spending time with your wives or your significant others because of this. Like you're pouring your heart and your soul into this. Like you might as well you know, kind of say it with your chest and let your nuts hang just a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
shit.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it, you might as well go all in, right? Yeah, no, I will say to be fair to the devs, like I've been doing this a long time, and the first couple of games I made, I wasn't this confident, right, with it, and did fairly well, but like you got to have like a few under your belt before you're like, yeah, let's do this, let's like go all the way. And I've had a few under my belt now, and this is my dream game, like, and like I really believe that we can create like a genre defining MMO. It's to be like Crystal, it's not going to be that when we drop, but it's going to be something you can like play and see like, oh shit, like this can be that. Like let them cook for another couple more years and it can be that. So
I love it. And you mentioned that you made a couple games in the past. What games for those that aren't
yeah,
familiar?
sure. So I've been like an entrepreneur basically my whole life. I was like very stubborn and didn't want to work for big companies. So although I did a little bit, I made a game in college. It's not very well known. It's called Sea Odyssey. It was like a roguelike space shooter, which I think is actually like super underrated. It's actually really fun. It's basically, if you know what Binding of Isaac is, it's like Binding of Isaac plus Geometry Wars, plus
Okay.
giant monsters from Shadows of Colossus. So that was really cool. We put the game on Switch, on Xbox, on PlayStation. Learned a lot about making games from that.
I
But
actually
after that,
remember seeing this game.
Oh
Believe it
yeah,
or not. Yeah, because I
yeah.
went and looked it up, and I
That's
remember
awesome.
seeing this game. Yeah,
It's
it's
actually
pretty cool.
underrated, and it's
Yeah,
actually a lot of fun. I think if we had done like made the game's like very hard, I think if we made it a little more approachable and added multiplayer, I think it could have been a really a hit, a big hit, at least in the indie scene. Um, and then after that, I worked in AAA for a little bit. I worked at Electronic Arts, Microsoft. Didn't really like working for big companies because I didn't really have the agency that I wanted. Worked on Madden, some other games, and then I started a virtual reality company. This was in 2016, 2017, because I believed like in the metaverse, obviously, and I thought VR was really cool. And for the record, Avalon's not a VR game initially; it will eventually be, but the market's too niche. And so with Cyberdream, which was my last company, I bootstrapped that literally out of my mom's garage or my mom's basement, and
hell yeah.
grew it to about 40 employees. We built tech for like it was mostly like loved VR, wanted to build something like the metaverse was kind of like our mission, and but it just I was a little too early in my career to do that at that point in time. But we built tech for like NASA. We built tech for Universal Studios, like VR experiences. We built stuff for Dave and Buster's. Like there's a lot of a lot of
That's
random stuff we
that's
did
actually
for
pretty
them.
fucking cool though.
Yeah, and then we built what was one of the best selling virtual reality games in 2020. It was a VR battle royale, called Virtual Battlegrounds. But
Rich.
ultimately, like I sold the company because I really wanted to create Avalon, and that was really why I started Cyberdream. I just wasn't ready, but I really wanted to create Avalon, and I knew that the VR space wasn't really it for it initially, and I also knew that I needed to be decentralized. I had been talking about how to build like a peer-to-peer network for the metaverse for a long time. And when Ethereum came out, and like a couple of years later, and I saw what people were trying to do, like saw a lot of other technologies, I knew it was time to go after this. So
That's a fucking sick journey, dude. Like, you know, Cyber first of all, cool ass name for a company. Um, and you made a VR BR. You made Black Sea Odyssey. I remember this game because I really loved the font. Um, because I've always been into design and stuff. So, like, I remember specifically seeing that font, and I was like, "Yo, that B is so fat." Like, it's hard to get like really good, um, and it's hard to get really good like gothic style fonts to be chunky and still clean. So I was like, I remember being obsessed with that B. So GG's to whoever
nice.
did that font for
We
you.
it was
Yeah.
Marcelo, who was an artist that I actually went to college with from UCF. He was like the best artist in our program. He made that font and that poster art. I had the poster for Black Sea Odyssey behind me somewhere, but it's at my house, which I'm moving into, so it's not
Oh,
currently here
nice,
right now.
nice. I guess it was the need to make Avalon, and then the decentralization factor that drove you to do what you're doing now, basically, which is actually kind of crazy. Like, how many people would just stay kind of cozy where they're at, or and continue building in that vein, and you're just like, nah, fuck it, I need decentralization.
You know, to be honest, like people might not believe this, whatever. It's the truth. I was making good money running Cyberdream, and like I was chilling.
Yeah.
Like I could have I was at a point where like I could probably start working like 3 or 4 hours a week and like just take home fat checks on a monthly basis, which is like kind of the dream for a lot of people. But like, dude, I don't know, man. Like I'm on this earth for a short amount of time. Like if I'm gonna do something, I want to do something I'm passionate about. I want to make a difference, right? And that's really why I started Avalon, is I want to like really make a dent in the world. That's why I started making games. That's why I love Final Fantasy VIII. It's because like I love the feeling that I had playing those kind of games growing up, and I want to give that to other people. So it's my driver.
How I love that, dude. Shout out to that shit. I can actually really relate to that story. I have to tell it on a different episode because I really want to focus on like what you've been talking about here. But
Cool.
definitely can relate to that. I've definitely fucked myself out of a lot of money. I'll say that much, because I had to pursue passion. But so the need to be decentralized, was it because you got into crypto first, and then it kind of like opened your eyes, or were you always seeking that, and then crypto kind of was
So
like the solution, right?
so it's the latter sort of. So
Okay.
I first of all I got into Bitcoin really early. I was an early investor in Bitcoin. This is a joke shirt. It's a Bitcoin Platinum. Anyway, don't look up Bitcoin Platinum. If you do, it's probably stupid. I got it at a convention. That was funny. I got into Bitcoin really early. I was like, I actually got convinced my mom, because I didn't really have any money in the time, to buy some Bitcoin on my behalf. Although I'm selling it now and I'm giving all that money and helping her buy a house actually. But I helped. It was like $500 or something at the time, and I thought decentralized finance was really cool. Like, why, relying on single governments is crazy for all of your, especially if you're in a third world country. It's crazy, and even in the U.S., I mean, who the hell knows, right? So I thought
Yeah.
decentralized finance was really cool. And then Ethereum came out and thought decentralized technology was even cooler. There's a lot of interesting use cases for it. But even before Ethereum, this is when I was running, I think, Cyber Dream, or just before I knew about Ethereum. I was running Cyber Dream, and I was working with my friends, some of the guys that made Sea Odyssey actually, and we were like trying to solve, how do we decentralize? No, we didn't call it decentralized. We called it, how do we create a peer-to-peer based networking solution so that our metaverse can be player owned and player driven? And so like we were like trying to solve it. It's like a really complicated problem to solve, and we're like game developers and network engineers, and we've been working on it, and like we came up with a bunch of really interesting ideas, but none of them were even close to what cryptocurrency, what blockchain can do. The ideas that we had at the time. So, as I began to learn more about Ethereum, it kind of just like clicked. It took a few years, but kind of like clicked. I'm like, wait, like this can be the backbone infrastructure to decentralizing the metaverse. Like, why didn't I think of that earlier? Like, this is the perfect use case for it. And so, yeah, it just, the technology, like I had a problem, and then the technology came about, and I'm like, oh, this solves it. This solves the problem. Now, like I was saying before, it doesn't just solve the whole problem. You don't decentralize everything in the game. That's silly, but it can decentralize the things that matter, the things that I talked about: governments, interoperability, digital ownership, so that you can have a game that lives forever without the developers being around. You can have a game that's governed by its users, without the developers say on what things can happen, which is ultimately what we want to do.
Yeah, man. It's nah. I mean, I like how you guys wanted that, and then you kind of like the Ethereum thing finally clicked, and Ethereum feels like it's in a weird place right now, because I've come around to blockchains like Solana and things like that, but I was a really big Ethereum maxi, specifically because I always felt that the developer network there understood the decentralized dream. Like they got the assignment. Like any type of relatively successful governance type of protocol or anything that we've seen in crypto has always kind of happened on Ethereum. I feel like in many ways the initial dream that we all signed up for has kind of been waning away. People are more into the fundamentals than they are like what the whole purpose of this tech was made for.
Yeah.
How do you feel with how that's kind of gone down, right? Like, as a former, and I still consider myself an Ethereum maxi at my core because it's what I believe in. But, I've kind of had to explore other options for the financial side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely am a technologist and more of a decentralization maxi, right? Kind of as you described.
Yeah.
I also think Ethereum Foundation has had some trouble lately. I hope they get their stuff together and are able to make some smooth sailing out of it. But I mean, especially the last, I think, 6 months. I mean, look, at the end of the day, most people are in crypto because they want to make money, right? I
Yep.
think you have to be pretty blind to that, not to see that, not to know that. And certainly, I mean, I want to make money. Everybody wants to make money, but it's not why I'm here. And I think that ironically, I think that the most likely outcome for everybody, or for many people in the space, to make money actually isn't a focus on making money. It's going to be a focus on creating value. And you can only create value through, use in the technology. Like, don't get me wrong, like you can pump and dump a meme coin, but you're not actually adding any value, you're just extracting money and
Exactly.
extracting value from the community. And unfortunately, we've really seen that as the meta over the last 6 months. A lot of frankly useless coins have dropped, or many not very useful coins, I should say, that have hit crazy valuations. A ton of people sold, and a whole lot of people got burned, and some people made a lot of money, right? I know it sucks to see it. I'm not really surprised. I think we're going to get more of that. And I think that the only way that we're going to be able to change, the kind of the narrative in the space and get more, ironically outside capital, is through kind of moving away from that and moving into adding value. Certainly what we're interested in doing here at Avalon. Now, that being said, like I said before, the hard thing about decentralization is it doesn't make things easier. It makes things harder, right? Like a lot of the technologies that we're building, that add value to people's lives, don't need decentralization and shouldn't be used for decentralization. They're used for very specific sorts of things. And I think that scares a lot of developers. Right? A lot of game developers, for example, are I think scared of decentralization because it makes things harder, but it can add more value to people too. It can add more value to people's lives. Like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to bring your items from one game into another game without having to rely on a centralized authority for that? Wouldn't it be cool to be able to govern your own game spaces? Wouldn't it be cool to be able to like add mods to games forever beyond the life cycle of a game, right? Things that maybe not be as immediately obvious. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. It's always cool to see someone that's building in the gaming space that's actually more aligned with like the OG side of thinking when it comes to crypto, at least. Because I kind of encounter a lot of devs that maybe they're not as pilled on crypto, or they don't really get like the spirit of what we were trying to what we're trying to accomplish here. I agree. Creating value is always the number one way to create wealth for yourself and the people around you. Not just being an extractor. So, I'm still bullish on the spirit of what Ethereum stood for, and I've kind of seen it making its way to like other networks and things like that, right? Like, I would say not as hardcore as it used to be, but maybe we'll kind of have a renaissance period when everybody gets tired of getting rugged.
I hope so. I have a lot of my money in ETH, so. Yeah.
Oh shit! All right. I mean, you mentioned the obviously like we've spent a lot of time talking about like decentralization governance. I want to talk about you had retweeted like a virtual bacon tweet, right? And he had mentioned that DeepSeek showed the need for like open sourcing AI. How are you feeling about the AI race right now, right? Like, we got DeepSeek, we got OpenAI, we got X, we got fucking Alibaba. Like, I mean, Claude. Like, there's so much going on, dude. Like, you being someone that actually works with all this tech, how are you feeling with the race?
So, I mean, I gotta preface this, like, I'm a game developer, not an AI developer. Now, we are using a lot of AI in Avalon. Like, we love, like, AI is going to like, ultimately our mission at Avalon is to make it easy for anybody to be able to create their own games, and then all of those games interconnected create something like a metaverse. And AI absolutely is going to make it easier for people to create their own games. Not only that, but expand the kind of games that we can make, which is why we're so into AI. AI companions are going to be a huge part of it. Now, my unfiltered opinion on AI is that it's kind of terrifying. Like, the rate of progress that we're seeing with AI, like, kind of scares me, and I don't think people are ready for what's going to happen in society over the next 5, 10, 20 years. I've done a fair amount of reading on the subject, and the idea of like AI sort of in self-improving may enter into like essentially an escape velocity where like its intelligence is going to like be beyond our comprehension. This is very much getting into like tinfoil hat land. But I don't know. I'm scared, man. I'm having an existential crisis. It's not going to be long before like AI is going to be applying for people's jobs, and it's already starting to happen. Things like that in line. So I don't think most people are ready for what AI is going to be able to do. I think it's very important that we create good alignment with AI. Again, not an AI person in terms of like I don't create AI, but if we don't create good alignment with AI and we end up getting one of these AI that reaches escape velocity, that could be very bad for society. I think we should be more scared than we currently are, and we should be taking it more seriously than we currently are.
If you had to, let's say we're at a bar and someone's like, "Hey, $5. How much longer until we achieve AGI?" What would you say?
Man, again, not my world. So the term AGI, the problem is the term AGI. How do you define AGI?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a lot of like I would say already if you talk to a chatbot right now, like you wouldn't even know it was like if you especially if you put on the good if you told it to act a certain way, you wouldn't even know it was like it's already past the God, I forgot the test the test name the truest test or whatever test. Like you wouldn't know. You think it was a human, like, and it can talk to you like a human, right? And it can do just about every task, or at least most tasks, basic in their basic form, as good as your average human can currently. I think the thing that's really missing right now is like doing more long-term complex tasks. Like, hey, become a programmer on my team and make all these features without a bunch of daily constant direction. Right? We're not there, but I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I think maybe the world will accept we have AGI in 2 years, would be my guess. I think Sam Altman will declare we have AGI maybe in Q1 2026. That's my guess.
Oh, man.
If you want a more direct answer.
All right. Q1 2026. I mean, that's kind
That's
of
going to be when Sam Altman declares it, and I think the world will accept it in like 2027. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of I feel like we're on a similar trajectory personally.
Yeah,
I use AI quite a bit. I had been actually experimenting with trying to build my own agents like well over a year ago, like November 2023 when they first kind of started making their
cool.
way and you had to like host them in your fucking PC and all that shit.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to make it too nerdy so that like the average viewer isn't like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But yeah, I mean, it's it's been really interesting seeing the race come about, and I feel like things were kind of coasting up until like 6 months ago. Then shit started getting really heavy. And which I guess which AI do you use the most? Like not as a regular, it could be like regular day to day, like in development. Like which have you seen kind of just gives you the highest quality, like consistency?
So, um, so I mean, we Avalon is a company. There's like a few different AIs that we use on a regular basis. So, Midjourney we use constantly for concept art. We constantly, it's like informs us constantly, as well as some other visual models. My engineers mostly use ChatGPT. We started using it like a year ago. We have their pro model. So we use it regularly. I mean, whether or not Grok or the newest version of Claude is a better programmer or DeepSeek, I don't know. Like I can tell you that O3 Mini is a pretty damn good programmer, and we use that pretty regularly. We were using O1 before to help us with code, and I can tell you each model is a noticeable gap in improvement. I would say O3 Mini is kind of like almost a mid-level, at least junior level engineer in terms of like its ability
Damn.
to respond to code, and which can save you a lot of time when you're trying to make voluminous edits. And then there's some more bespoke AI that we use at Avalon. There's Dynamo, which is like a character creating tool, and we're going to give that to our players. It's kind of like, I don't know, Maya on crack, but much easier to use. And so our players will be able to like create like really custom bespoke characters with an AI tech inside of Avalon. And then we also use Enrolled AI for AI agents. And I think they're using a few different LLMs for their characters.
Hell yeah. I mean, I hadn't even heard of Dynamo before, so I mean, again, we're getting AI alpha fam. Let's get it.
It's a very specific type of AI for creating characters. You can look up dynamo.co, or we should be on their website. We used to be.
Nah, I mean it's really it's really cool to even hear you say that you use Midjourney, right? I love Midjourney. This VTuber was made through Midjourney.
That's sick.
Um, but a lot of people are like, "What? Nah," and like this was Midjourney like 2 years ago, man.
It looks
Like
great.
yeah, thank you. Obviously, I did prompt it with some of my old art style, so it was something that I had put into the mid journey like I don't want to say database, but I really ran that chat and like cooked it, so I had finally started creating like the quality art that I wanted. And then like I was finally able, like it gives me consistency every single time. Like I've been using the same chat for like 2 years now.
It's awesome.
And yeah, I love mid journey. I love being able to make art with it. And obviously you guys use it for way cooler shit, but no one ever believes me that the VTuber is mid journey based. So sometimes devs get fudded for that. I don't think it's necessary because
It doesn't matter, man. Ultimately, people just want to play a good game.
speed is fucking everything.
It is. I mean, so like all of our, so like this image behind me is not Mid Journey, by the way. It's actually hand done concept art, but um, all of our like in-game assets are created mostly by hand, 3D sculpted, right? But we concept everything in Mid Journey because it saves us a lot of time, and we do have concept artists too because we got to change things a bit around, get them more exactly how we want to, put them in specific dimensions sometimes. And frankly, in the future, if I could create 3D models, which you can right now, but not very good ones. If I can create 3D models though in the future with an AI tool, I absolutely will. I don't care. It's gonna like at the end of the day, people just want to play a good game, man. Nobody
Hell
cares
yeah.
if I 3D modeled it or use AI to create it. That's
Yeah,
not
and
most people.
speaking of like Avalon assets, you guys have been making you had posted those castle kits.
Yeah.
Yo, the fucking inside of the images that you posted look crazy. Like they look really good. I like the different colors. It almost reminded me of like stained glass windows.
Yeah.
It looked really good. Like I really liked it. Is that something that some people are going to be able to like prompt up with AI inside of the game, or is it going to be like a pre-made
So no,
kit
those are more
thing?
pre-made.
Okay.
We're gonna work. So we're creating like base kits for people to like snap together, kind of like Lego blocks. But then we also hand some tools over to change materials on them, so you can like colorize them how you want, make them more individual. And then we're adding different themed ones, right? So the first few kits are like fantasy, then we're having some cyberpunk kits and some post-apocalyptic kits. So you can like, kit bash and make your own worlds. We also have a marketplace. So like people can like upload their like, hey, like I made this really dope castle. It's on the marketplace. You can go download it and put it in your game world. And then you can like upload stuff, share stuff. We have some of our artists already adding like a bunch of prefabricated things that they made. So eventually we may build tools, or we may expose tools so people can generate their own kits. I'd love to build AI into that. I know we had one point in time speaking with the Nvidia team about helping us with something like that. So it's something we'll definitely be interested in doing in the future. Just the tech's not there yet for like generating those kind of 3D assets.
Yeah, I mean I love the marketplace. Shout out there. That would be really really cool.
It helps.
That's the type of shit that I really like to see in this space. Us being able to like cook up our own crap and then just like the peer-to-peer network, taking shape. And if you're a good designer, people are gonna want your stuff. If you suck ass, the market will tell you. Uh, but you mentioned Nvidia. Like, what's that process like as like a Web3 company? Are they into crypto at all, or like do they really care? Like, what's the process of it, like talking to them and working with them?
I don't know. So I don't know the specifics of how every company is going to be treated. We
Yeah.
just have some, because we have a pretty long history of game development. My co-founders especially have relationships with some of the people over there, and so we were able to talk with them pretty easily. They are very busy. They have a lot going on. They have a lot of games that working with them, a lot of AI companies, so their attention is pretty stretched pretty thin. But ultimately, Nvidia is really excited about the metaverse, though. Like they believe that they're going to build the technology that helps create it. And so, when they learned about what we're doing at Avalon, it made a lot of sense for them to be involved.
Hell yeah. I mean, I just love to see that they're even being, the astronomically fucking sized company that they are with how much growth they've had in recent years. Seeing them still like help out like devs is cool, like there's people in this space that they're working on just no offense to anyone, but like the smallest of things, and they act like too Hollywood to like talk to you when you go to reach out to their team and ask for assistance. They're kind of just like the docs are on the site, like it's like, hey man, I'm trying to build something. I'm not even asking for like money or some shit. Like I'm trying to actually like cook. Don't give me
Yeah.
docs are on the site. If fucking Nvidia can squeak out time for somebody, like you guys can too. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That's reminds me. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but it reminds me of Steam. Steam, like they don't like you like they give you basically like their customer support team for your developer is non-existent unless your like name starts with Electronic Arts or Microsoft. They don't care
damn,
about you.
that's
So
crazy. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, they're 30. You had actually talked about like the 30% fee barely even being worth it anymore, right?
It's not worth it, man. I mean, it is because the problem, like, if you're gonna launch a game on PC, like everybody's on Steam, and so you either have a mark, like you're either an Electronic Arts or Microsoft with your own platform and a ton of users, or you're just given 30% to Steam for them to ignore all of your emails and
Oh,
that's about it.
that's hurt.
So
That's pain.
yeah,
Well, in your experience, though, is the distribution like strong? Like, obviously, it's Steam, right? But like, how
yeah.
much distribution is that for like an indie project, for
I mean,
example?
it's a big deal, man. I mean, it's
Oh,
that's why you pay them 30% is like your game's not going to get seen nearly as much without Steam. It just sucks because it's basically 30% for an online store, but like they have things like promotional periods where you can for a period of time get your game out in front of hundreds of thousands of eyeballs or at least thousands of eyeballs. That's why you give them 30% of your money. So for all those sales for that network.
all right, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like Amazon or eBay if you're like a product related person, or you're some like retail
Yeah,
product stuff like
there's a lot
that.
more cost though. Like if Amazon's like
Yeah.
shipping those things, and
Yep.
there's a lot more involved there for Amazon than there is for Steam. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And as we begin to wrap up here, we talked a lot about what we're both scared about, right? Like what kind of makes us shit our pants a little bit with like AI and decentralization and central versus centralization. I want to ask you like three things that you're really excited about and optimistic for. Um,
what am I really excited about and optimistic for?
yeah.
Ironically, the things that I'm scared about are also very excited about. I'm talking about AI first. I've talked about sort of the things we should be afraid of, but on the flip side, you know, like for example, a version of, I think it was like ChatGPT, I forget which LLM model was just trained to decode like various genomes of DNA, and is able to like synthetically create DNA now. And you know,
Whoa.
the health implications for like what AI is going to be able to do, like, is going to be just profound. You know, extending people's lifespan, curing cancer, right? If you have an ASI or an AGI, like essentially tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of the best researchers in the world solving these problems, which is what an AGI network can do, or an ASI network. Like, we're going to solve all kinds of humanitarian problems. Like, there's actually a utopian society in the future where disease is mostly eradicated. People don't have to work nearly as much. Most people are on universal basic income. That can be a reality, you know, if we're able to use AI in a way that is, you know, value adding for society as a whole. I'm like, that's exciting, man. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about going to space. I think that's really exciting. What else am I excited about? I'm really excited about Avalon. I think, you know, one, I just talked about like all these awesome things that AI can do. Well, when AI, you know, replaces most people's jobs because they don't need to work anymore, well, what are people going to do? What are we going to do? Like, we don't have to, you know, the guy that delivers the garbage, or the guy that is a server, or even the guy writing code doesn't have to work anymore because AI can do most of those things. What are people going to do? Well, maybe they're going to want to play in the metaverse. And so I'm excited about, you know, what we can do with Avalon, the kind of multi-genre universe. I mean, I imagine, you know, I got started making games as a Warcraft 3 map modder, and like one of the first games I made was basically a recreation of Helm's Deep, and you'd like attack
Oh
Helm's Deep.
shit.
Yeah, you'd attack Helm's Deep, and you could like play as like Legolas or whatever. But like, imagine, like, you know, we make a world one day that's like, okay, here's Helm's Deep, and like it's you and all your friends defending Helm's Deep, and then like instead of who's attacking you is like the Marvel. It's like the Marvel Alliance. Right? Like, here's like Thor, here's Hulk. Like, you're playing as Legolas. Maybe one of your teammates is like Goku. I don't know. And then like someone else is flying in a Star Destroyer, and then like Gandalf comes flying out carrying a lightsaber. Like, that's a game I want to play, man. Like, that's ultimately, you know, 5 years from now, that's what I want Avalon to be doing. So
Gandalf fucking carry a lightsaber, yo. That would be
yeah,
fire.
yeah. I mean, you know, one step at a time, but that's a thing in the future that excites me.
Holy shit, dude, that would be amazing. Helms, no, you know, Two Towers, one of my favorite movies for sure.
Great movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
Legolas was pretty badass.
dude, I remember I think I was like middle school age or some shit. And I was
Yeah,
just like screaming. There's that scene where he like skateboards down the stairs
yeah.
and he's
That's
just like
exactly what I was
fucking
thinking of.
sniping people. Dude,
Yeah.
I was like screaming at the top of my lungs, like popcorn fell off my lap type shit. And my mom's like, dude, what's wrong with you? I was like, that was sick. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we could ever do stuff like that in Avalon, I'd totally be hooked. For
Yeah.
sure. No, I love the optimistic point of view. You know that I didn't know that the DNA stuff was happening with the AI. Kind of that's actually pretty fucking crazy that it's already coming that far along. Um, yeah, and I love that last bit there. You know, showing the love to the Warcraft 3 modding. Like, that's where you started. How old were
Yeah.
you when you did that?
Man, I started modding. So I actually started modding games on StarCraft when I was like 7. And then you know, I was just like, hey, Cody, my brother. I was like, hey, Cody, I made this, like, we watched, God, it was like Starship Troopers or something, and I made like a little Starship Troopers mod with like the Zerd or their aliens. Like, hey, come play. And then I was like, you know, so started doing that, started making little tower defenses, and started like getting more serious with it on Warcraft. And so I actually made a lot of mods on Warcraft. It was a lot of fun. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like a kid, you know, I was like a kid kind of like on Roblox, but like I made some really fun stuff. I actually like made a spin-off of Dota too. That was like fairly popular. I made a video game RPG. Did a lot of cool things.
Damn.
Yeah.
So to your family and friends, you've always been like the gamer, like the game
Huge nerd.
developer kid,
It's
basically.
funny, you know, and like, you know, I grew up in like an all boys neighborhood, and like everyone's like, hey, let's play football, and like, you know, all tough guys, and I'd be like, hey, you guys want to come play with my Legos? And I'd convince like all these guys, you know, to come over and play Legos with this like pen and paper game that I made, and then everyone would have like a blast, which was really funny. So
No, that's amazing. Well,
yeah,
I'm gonna wrap up here, but it's been great getting to know more of you, Sean. And you know, for anyone that doesn't know how to pronounce your last name, because I currently don't, and I don't want to be rude. How do we say your full name?
well, thanks, Mizzy. It's been nice. Thanks for having me, man. It's actually pronounced Pinnock. Some
Okay.
people say Pinnock. Other people that have the same last name as me say Pinnock, but it actually is Pinnock. Um, yeah.
Sean, all right, Sean Pinnock, everyone, thanks for stopping by, sharing, this hour with us, and I feel like we learned a lot. At least I did.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, I'm glad you had me. Thanks, Mizzy.
Yes, sir. Just wrapped up the episode with Sean. Honestly, it's been really fun over the last 2 years that I've been working in this space, getting to know so many of these devs. I wouldn't say on a fully like personal level, but definitely getting closer with some devs and others, and being able to learn more about like what motivates them, what their why is, and being able to also see, I guess, where it all started for them. A lot of on this show we get to see a lot of like early moments, or at least hear about them. Right, we get to hear a lot about early moments and like what motivated certain developers to do certain things, or certain people in the space to go after their dreams. And I would say that's probably one of the most underrated parts of this space. A lot of people are here to accomplish a goal or a dream that they may have had from childhood. And seeing someone like Sean that's been basically some form of game developer since the age of 7, he's out here now building his dream game. You can tell there's like a lot of innocence behind it, right? Like he's building with the right intentions. He's trying to build something, with the expectation of satisfying a younger version of himself, I would say. And for me, open source is all about learning about the past, present, and the future of the people that are here. Like, we're all here dedicating our lives to this industry, spending time away from loved ones, and really just going for it. And it's so motivating to surround myself with so many like-minded people, and people that are here for the long haul. People that are here to accomplish a goal and set their sights out on what most people around us outside of this industry would seem to think it's either impossible or not likely. And it takes a lot of courage to build here, I would say, when you're trying to build with the right intentions. So many people try to scam, you know, in this industry, or do weird things, and that's why sometimes it gets a bad rep. But when I have people come on open source and I really find out what their intentions are and learn more about, their why and all those sorts of things, it does instill me with hope. So it was really great having, Sean and some of the former guests. This is my first time doing an outro for one of the open source episodes. Like we had Finn in previous weeks, we had Adam before that, and the person that started all this was Coop with me. It's been very refreshing to be reminded that there are a lot of people that are trying to do things for the right reasons, and there's a lot of people here that are all in, where there is no second option for people like us. We want the industry to succeed, and I hope you guys take away as much value from this show as I do. I feel like a student up here. I learn more and more each and every week with each guest that we have, and I would love any feedback or any tips that you guys, what would you guys like to see in future episodes? Who would you like to see us have come on the show? But yeah, I mean, that's the end of open source episode 3, which is featuring Sean Pinnock from Avalon. And I can't wait for you guys to see the episode, and I can't wait to see who we have next onto the show. We have some really cool guests lined up, and I think this show is something that I'm just going to keep iterating on each and every week, getting a little better, you know, um, building in public. There'll be tweaks, proof of work kind of thing, where you'll see the improvements from one episode to the next. And shout out Siege for all the crazy and dope edits and how quick he is to come back with it. Shout out Damien as well for really helping, me week to week with refining the process, refining the ideas, and also coming in and doing some of the quick edits towards the end. And shout out Web3 Gaming, shout out the community, shout out crypto. I'm very, very proud to build in this space, and it's something I'm insanely passionate about. And for many of us, even though we feel like we've been here for a long time, this is just the beginning. So can't wait to do more episodes. Can't wait to hear what you guys think, and have a good rest of your day. Peace.